Hey everyone, it's Faith from the Literacy View, and I have something exciting to share. Big Sky has done it again with over 25 hours of powerful literacy content. We're talking mentor recordings, real talk, and absolutely no fluff. And guess what? We've got an exclusive just for our listeners. Normally, it's $199, but not for you. Use the code LiteracyView. That's LITERACYVIEW, all one word, but $30 off. And if you're ready to lead and grow, the Literacy Leadership Mentorship is now open. Same code, same savings. Oh, and yes, the swag is live. You don't have to be in Montana to wear it with pride. All the links are in our show notes. This is the Literacy View, where the nonsense stops and the learning takes off. All codes are in the show notes. That's the Literacy View.
Hi, everyone. It's Judy Boxner from the Literacy View, reporting live on the scene at the Big Sky Literacy Conference in Montana. And today is day 3. And I'm so honored to have some very, very special guests here today. By the way, hi, Faith Borkowski. I know you're watching us at home. And Anne is very excited to meet you. So we're going to start today by our guests letting you know a little bit of who they are and a little bit about themselves.
Cool. We're glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us. This is exciting. We haven't done a podcast before.
Woo!
We're newbies. We'll see how it goes. I'm Ann Kaiser. I'm a professor of special ed psychology and most recently speech and hearing at Vanderbilt University. And I'm an early intervention researcher interested in how kids learn language and how parents and teachers can support children's language development.
Wow.
Okay. I'm Taydi Owens Ray. I'm one of Ann's doctoral students. I'm entering my 3rd year of the doc program at Vanderbilt University. I'm in the early childhood special education program. And before coming to Vanderbilt, I was or am a speech language pathologist, a bilingual speech language pathologist. I speak Spanish and English. So had a transition from more school age kids to now working with younger toddlers and preschool kiddos and early language development and intervention with Ann.
Great.
Hi, I'm Eon-Joo Jang. I'm also a doc student at Ann's lab. I'm now entering my 2nd year. And I am a BCBA licensed special education teacher. I taught for a year in the classroom at the private autism school and also worked at a clinic with as a BCBA with young children. My interest is in community-based language support through supporting caregivers and teachers, especially in underserved population and community.
Oh, that's great. Cool. I don't know if you know about me, but I'm still a literacy coach. I've been with New York City Public Schools for 29. This is going to be my 29th year. I'm 50 years old, and this is my 29th year of public education.
Started right out of undergrad, right?
2 weeks after I graduated college, my parents were like, "That's it, you're going to work," and I'm still doing it. I'm in the trenches. I was a classroom teacher for a million years. Then my passion is pre-K, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. And interestingly enough, I have to tell you a little bit about myself. My former training, are you ready? You might not like it. It was in reading recovery. And that's part of my story. There were many things that were wonderful, but there were many things that didn't work to help students. And I hope that this podcast encourages people to know that structured literacy is very important for our kids. That doesn't mean we have to throw out everything we knew in the past, because there were things that I was doing that was aligned, but there were many, many things that were missing. And for the last 8 years, I've been very passionate about bringing structured literacy into my classrooms. I work as a literacy coach in one of the poorest districts in New York City, in the Bronx, and we're having amazing results with our kids. I'm really passionate. And it's funny, it's my 29th year in public education, and I think I'm more passionate now than ever. And It's an amazing feeling.
Which is exactly what I'd love to hear.
Thank you. I mean, we all get a little antsy in August, those commercials start. I mean, on TV, they're already showing Halloween commercials, but I'm excited. So I'm very honored to be with like-minded people today. And this is going to be great. So tell me a little bit about why Big Sky? Why are you guys here? Why are you all together? And what's the core message you hope to amplify here today?
So 3 years ago, so I've known Danielle forever from a totally different context. And about 3 years ago, she'd been asking me for a couple of years to come. And I'm like, I'm an early childhood person. Our kids don't even read. Why would you want me to come? And are these people going to listen to what we have to say? So I came that first year and it was amazing. And I met Tiffany, Tiffany Hogan, who really changed my thinking about DLD.
I spoke to her yesterday.
And I realized that we were already then doing a big randomized trial of a language intervention for kids at risk for DLD. But talking to Tiffany really lit a fire in me about linking what we did in early intervention to reading, because that had not been part of our connection before. So our lab, called Kid Talk or Toddler Talk, both, is all about language intervention for kids that are struggling with language learning. And we see all kinds of kids. We first of all, we're multilingual, we're multicultural, we're multi-disability.
We're kind of trilingual.
And that's kind of unusual. So a big contingent in our lab is Spanish speaking, and we see young Spanish speaking kids with their families, many of whom are immigrants and many of whom have not yet had access to services. But we also see kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome. But most recently, we have become really interested in community level interventions for toddlers, particularly toddlers who are not yet identified with a language disability, but are showing all the indicators early on. And that's kind of what we've been talking about at this meeting. We've been talking about early book reading, about our Toddler Talk project, which is for childcare teachers, and a little bit about early identification.
Yay! Early identification. We have to talk about that soon.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm really passionate about, but there's many things that I'm concerned about in public education that I see. So I would love your input on that as well.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to add something to what we do? We see a lot of small children. We live with 2-year-olds.
So like, how would a parent know to find you guys? How does the process happen? So exactly where are you guys exactly located?
We're in Tennessee. We're in Nashville at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
We found with the Spanish-speaking families that Ann was talking about that it has to be community level and community-based. So we have gotten most of our participants by partnering with a clinic there that serves a large Latino population.
I need a clinic in my school. We have a clinic. We have the poorest kids.
Mm-hmm.
We are partnering with somebody this year called Link, where they're going to bring the science of reading training to my parents. So there's going to be literacy games for my 3K, my pre-K, and so forth. But we don't have anything that looks like this. So tell me more about this.
It is, I think they serve about 10,000 kids a year.
It's a pediatric practice in a primarily Spanish-speaking neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that we really figured out, and Taydi did some nice work with this with Tatiana Pareto, who's our collaborator in all this, that for Spanish-speaking families, you have to go to where they are. Mm-hmm. You have to be affiliated with someone they trust.
That's right.
And you have to have a personal conversation with them, or they're not going to engage with a university or with a research project. But we were really lucky. We, over the last few years, engaged about 85 families in an early intervention project for kids that we thought were high risk for DLD. So these are 2 to 3-year-olds who have marked language disabilities and who are bilingual emergent. And so one of our important messages is, yes, you can assess really little kids who are learning more than one language. We have good tools for that. And we have clinicians trained in the field who can help you understand what your child's language learning should look like and what the contributions of bilingualism might be, but also distinguish from what is different in terms of acquisition and what's a delay in acquisition. Because I think
say that again. That was a very important point.
So for bilingual kids, what's a difference? Because acquiring 2 languages looks a little bit different than acquiring a single language.
100%.
And what's a delay? And the main message is kids who have language delays are delayed in both languages.
See, I think that's really important to understand. And I think that, even in my school, in my district, we're really struggling understanding that. And we're struggling in understanding even how to provide instruction, which language, how do we assess, what language are we assessing? Is it dyslexia? Is it DLD? Is it just dyslexia? How do we figure those things out more, and what kind of tools would you recommend? Like, what would I do tomorrow?
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, BS besties! These are the decodables you've been waiting for.
I founded Tumbleweed to cover all 5 pillars of literacy: decoding, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, phonemic awareness, plus writing and rich read-alouds.
And guess what? It's for all kids learning to read, including older and neurodiverse learners.
The lessons are ready-made, evidence-based, and aligned to the science of reading.
And here's the big surprise. And guess what, Literacy View listeners? Get 10% off for Literacy View listeners only, plus a chance to win exclusive bonuses in a surprise raffle. Now, in order to qualify for this, you need to email FaithandJudy@gmail.com. Once again, FaithandJudy@gmail.com to get your code and your discount.
And don't forget to visit tumbleweedpublishing.com to learn more.
And from your No BS besties at the Literacy View, check out Tumbleweed books as soon as possible to get this exclusive deal. Thank you, No BS besties. Bye.
Well, this is our resident speech language pathologist. So she and Taydi know a lot about, she and Eon-Joo know a lot about assessment, because we've seen a lot of Spanish speaking kids. We are seeing some Mandarin speaking kids now, which is a whole new territory for us.
Wow.
And
Wow, Mandarin speaking kids in Tennessee. My son is going to China, so that's fascinating. And he learned Mandarin. So that's pretty
Tennessee's
cool.
way more diverse than you think it would be.
That's really cool.
And that makes it hard for families to access services, because there's a lot of diversity, but not a lot of professional competence across different languages.
That's
Although our
interesting.
school system is very supportive in providing translators and interpreters, but for little kids, you know, the message that parents get is don't talk to your kid in any language but English.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he's delayed, he's bilingual.
Right.
And even if he's delayed, we can't tell if it's because he's bilingual,
Right.
or if he has a real
And then
language
sometimes
delay.
what I'm seeing is years go by and a kid may have needed help and might have not gotten the help that they need. And I am a firm believer in early intervention.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that all those things I just listed are
Yeah.
myths. Talk to your kid in his home language. It's the language of love, understanding, culture, affection, and building a strong home language first is the best thing you can do for any kid. And also, just as a parent who speaks that language, you're much more competent in supporting in your home language than you're going to be in supporting in another language, unless you're unusually bilingually fluent. Waiting and seeing isn't a good idea. We can tell by the time kids are 2 or 2.5 pretty clearly if they're going to be language delayed. There are good tools out there for most languages. Some excellent parent reporting materials that are translated into about 30 different languages. So we don't have to just wait and see. We can take a look. We can make good decisions based on the family and the child. And there are people in the community that are prepared to see little kids who are bilingual. You guys want to add something to that?
I think our 2 biggest things that still relate to what you're saying for assessment are to always assess in both languages, so you can get that full picture and so you can see the delay in both
Do you
languages.
believe in that in general? Like, for instance, we do like universal screeners at my site. We haven't done that from pre-K yet. Do you believe that even for universal screeners, we should push ourselves to get the data in both languages?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. To get as much information. One of the things that we often say is if the parent is concerned about their child's language, that's real.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get false positives from parents, meaning they don't report a delay when it isn't there. Sometimes there is a delay and the parent isn't sensitive to it. But if a parent says, I'm worried, pay attention to that. And especially, I think a parent who's aware of the bilingual dilemma will be sensitive to their kids' language in ways that some other parents may not be. And so if you say, are you worried about your kid's Spanish or your kid's
Right.
Mandarin or your kid's Portuguese? And they say, yeah, my other kids talked early.
Right.
My other kids are really chatty, but he just doesn't seem to talk. That's an immediate red flag to pay attention to that child and get a full assessment.
I think the key also for some parents is to not avoid. I think sometimes those kind of things can be scary. And I think that, some people, including myself, sometimes I get nervous about things. I worry, but when you are worried, to not let that worry be, I'm going to lock myself in the room and just take a shower and ignore it. So what recommendations would you have to parents when they are concerned, and what age are you seeing language issues that are popping up? When is it a red flag in your perspective?
Want to answer that, Owens?
I don't think there's a number to that. I think at any point, if you notice anything, if you think that what is this happening or what is this, I think parents or any caregivers should feel validated to even just ask the teachers or ask anyone. And I think they should be really careful in answering those questions. That wait and see. I think that's really risky feedback to give to caregivers who are concerned about certain things. But I think just navigating those conversations, kind of going back to families having those myths about learning two languages, they might kind of oh, I want my kid to speak only English at school. And sometimes there's a little pushback from families oh, I don't want intervention in home language, I don't want them to be confused. And I think that's where we come in with really carefully, really respecting their values and their perspectives, but also trying to tell them this is information that we know is a fact and evidence-based. And if there's a delay in both languages, supporting one language, even that is a home language that is not English, that's going to ultimately support English development, English learning naturally. So I think kind of navigating this conversation, even if it feels a little uncomfortable, there's a little bit of pushing, but there's also kind of a little bit more convincing, try to kind of advocate for kids, but also respecting the boundary and family values. I think that's something that we don't have definite answers. I think we aim to do it, but we also are still learning how to do that in a way that makes sense to everybody, in the most respectful way.
Around age, I feel absolutely confident that at 2.5 we can make those judgments.
I think so.
But if you have a 2-year-old who is not speaking at all, then that child should get an assessment right now, because by 2, kids should have about 50 words. If your child is not
a child
speaking,
should have 50 words. Does that include multisyllabic words or just single?
Just words. And they
Just
can
words.
be, kids also have artic concerns. They're learning the motor skills for speech. So they don't have to be perfectly formed words, but they have to be words that are used consistently to mark the same kinds of things. And there are lots of two things that are helpful: parent checklists and the CDC guidelines that are widely available on the web for how many words kids should have, and some indications of when to worry.
I think the problem is, though, a lot of my parents in my school, they would have no idea that a checklist exists, that there's a problem at 2 years old.
And in addition,
are your resources also available? Do you guys have resources that are available to the public as well? Or
we do have some, and we're working on having more available on our website. And,
Wonderful.
And the more we talk to people at this conference, I think it's been really interesting, because most of the folks here are school age people and actually don't know that much about early language development, because we spend our lives with toddlers. We're like, everybody must know this.
Right.
But I think that that's not true. It's actually the need to have more public information about what to expect. So at 2 years old, typical kids will have way more than 50 words. They'll have several hundred words, and they will be beginning to put words together. So if you have a child at 24 months who isn't talking, you should be concerned for multiple reasons. Could be a hearing problem, could be another disability, could be all kinds of things. Unfortunately, the message that many parents get is wait and see. And that's not a good idea.
can I ask you something, though? we very often in public schools do hear wait and see. Teachers always hear wait and see. We're told very often you need to have an extensive paper trail. We need to collect data. We want to minimize the number of kids that are in special education. And sometimes teachers will be really frustrated and we'll see kids that we know may have not been identified go to third grade. I'll give you an example, and I spoke about it the other day on a podcast. I had a student that was retained in first grade 3 times. She didn't have an IEP. She had a family history of dyslexia. So many of us in the field, we know that we shouldn't wait. But very often when you work in, bureaucracies and you don't have much control, especially as practitioners or teachers, we don't have that much control. What is your recommendation when you're hearing from districts, superintendents, principals? No. We got to limit the numbers on special education.
It's hard to push back with that and keep your job.
Right.
But this is a really important message around young kids. This is the time in which the brain is laying down the neural pathways for language. When children don't get services before 3 years old and they have a language disability emerging, they have a different pathway into school and into life if they get early intervention. And early intervention is available through Part C at no cost to every family. And often what families need is someone who will walk that path with them. And
Like
so
somebody to hold their hand a little
someone
bit.
to hold their hand
Of
and someone
course.
to go to that first appointment and make it not be scary and just say, I'm here for an assessment. So every pediatrician has access to information about Part C. So ask your doctor for a referral and ask if he has any other parents who've gone through that process and could you contact them. Ask your friends and neighbors if any of them have ever done that. And if none of them have, ask your sister, ask your mother-in-law, get someone to join you in that journey.
I think
So
that's
it will be
important. Not
less
everybody's
frightening.
that comfortable telling somebody, oh, my kid might have an issue. Sometimes you get nervous, embarrassed. You might feel like it's your fault. But I think
And we often often our culture blames parents. So
exactly. And
so
that is my
language-
biggest educational pet peeve. I cannot take it when I hear some of my colleagues in the past saying, oh, forget about that parent, that kid. We don't know what kids are going through. We don't know their life. We don't know their circumstances. We don't know what language experiences they have at home. We don't know if they've lost a parent or what they're going through. So I think we have to be really, really, really sensitive and, just fight for our kids, be champions for those kids. Those kids need us. We don't know what their circumstances are. And I see a lot of kids that are really in pain, social, emotionally. And I feel like sometimes the educational system doesn't give enough support. I feel like sometimes it's a lot of lip service, even in many schools, like school psychologists, they're there in the building, but what are they very often doing? They're just assessing. They're just seeing the data. Okay, this kid's getting an IEP, but who's there to talk to those kids?
Yeah.
We say that language is so important, and that's the whole theme of the conference, but why don't we prioritize language? I will give compliment, though. I'm so happy to see SLPs in the picture at this conference. That is such a special thing because I think SLPs very often in a lot of buildings, they're the ones in the basement. They're the ones over there. They're the ones that just pick up kids. And there's not that union. And I think that has to happen more because what I'm learning is SLPs have so much knowledge about language, literacy, science of reading, all of that. But I feel like in education, very often we're working in silos rather than together.
Perfect.
And I think that is a beautiful thing at this conference. Look, we have researchers, speech language pathologists, students that are in doctorate programs. How can we make that happen more? What are your suggestions?
Well, one thing is meeting together. I mean, we talked about that. Talked about there need to be more BCBAs because it's the BCBAs who see our kids with autism.
Can you tell our listeners, some of them might not know what BCBA means. I know.
Of course. No, I'm so sorry.
Because we have a lot of teachers, parents, administrators. There's just everybody watches the literacy.
BCBA stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. So we practice ABA, kind of like the common therapy that kids with autism might receive, which stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. So we basically kind of on the foundation of how behavior is a pattern of actions, how every behavior has a function, either to for me personally, not always to be admired, but to communicate, to use language. Language and behavior are very intertwined. So to communicate, to tell them what they need through their behavior, through the pattern of certain, actions. So we help them to find a replacement behavior if there's any challenging behaviors,
That's wonderful.
to make sure they can communicate their needs, what they want, what they need to do, without engaging in challenging behaviors, so they can have more optimal learning opportunities.
Why don't we see more people like you in our schools?
A lot of
Especially in the schools
a lot
that
of
need you.
schools hire BCBAs. They have staff or contract BCBAs.
I've seen a little bit. I've seen pockets.
They're often hired by a district, but they also have many caseloads, and they, it's very limited for them to be involved so much in with the kid, to engage with the kid and in the classroom with the teacher because of how many caseloads they have, and they're
Right. I see that with our speech therapists.
Yeah, exactly. Very
I'm like, can you help
similar
out? Can we collaborate? And they're like, their
issue.
caseloads. Maybe that's something we have to think about systematically, right?
Right.
Where are we spending our money? Are we prioritizing what's most important for kids, right?
I just want to say that BCBAs often know how to teach hard kids better than anybody else in the system.
Wow.
And we don't use that expertise because we think of them as coming in to solve a hard behavior problem. So this kid's got tantrums
Right.
and meltdowns, and a BCBA will be really good at helping you solve that problem. But he or she will also be really well trained in instruction. And so if you have a kid that's a really hard learner, consulting with your BCBA is a really good idea. And inviting her in to understand your classroom is a really great idea.
Wow.
And we're lucky in our program, we train special ed teachers. We also train BCBAs, and obviously we train amazing doctoral students. And that kind of training where people work together from the beginning and don't see themselves in those silos is super important. Just super, super
It really is.
important.
Even for myself as a coach, sometimes it's very lonely being the coach in the building.
Yeah.
So that's why I still have friends in other buildings, and we text each other and we troubleshoot together. And it makes such a big difference when you know you have a support system, that you're not alone. And I think that's really, really important. So I have some more questions. So apparently you're the creator of the theme and title, Language is Everything.
I'm your girl.
Which is the Big Sky Literacy Conference title. That is pretty amazing. So tell me a little bit more about that. You're
Well,
the creator.
It's about who your friends are. So Danielle and I have been friends for many years, and most of that time has been one long conversation about kids in pre-K. And somewhere in one of those conversations, that some of which happened 3 years ago, I said, Danielle, everything, language is everything. And a lot of people responded to that with a kind of, oh, that could be true. I mean, really, when Charles Hume actually heard me say that and said, yeah, that's right. That's what we've been saying all along. And then that sort of core group that's part of this conference took that really seriously. And I came and started talking about babies from birth being wired for language, how the brain develops, and that most of the kids that we're going to see forever with a reading problem came that way. So why are we waiting till they show up in third grade to say, oh, there's a problem? On the other hand, I want to say this thing because I think it's really important. We should not be worried about stigmatizing kids with early identification. This is a learning diversity. This is not a problem to be solved. It's a kid to be supported. It's a family to be supported. And this should travel with no stigma whatsoever. And what you were saying, Judy, about how it can feel really embarrassing for families to have their kid identified early.
Some
They can
parents have a
feel
hard time.
blame.
Yeah.
In some cultures, I think it's really, really hard to have a kid with a disability. That's something we can change our attitude about, something we can change everybody's attitude about. If this is a brain-based disability, there's no one to blame here.
I think sometimes the word disability makes people feel bad. Like my kids have told me that word doesn't feel very good to even hear because it makes a person feel like they lack ability. So has anybody ever thought about how that word could make people feel? And should we continue to use a word if it
No, we shouldn't use that word at all, but it's tricky because it's hard to say what word, and it's hard to qualify kids for services if
That's
you don't
true.
use those words. Tiffany Hogan gave a great talk this morning talking about neurotypical and neurodiverse.
Yeah.
And her end point really is, and I think we all believe this, it's a continuum. We're all divergent.
I
on
think that
some
was
part of the
such a
continuum.
comforting thing to hear, because I think as in society, we kind of make people feel bad. We always make people feel like there's something wrong with them. And there's this feeling that even me, I've been, in education so long, and there's always this feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough, or a new curriculum came, oh, she knows it better than me. And I think we have to normalize that, yes, everybody has something going on.
I like that. That's one of the things in our toddler work that's a big theme. What's typical for toddlers?
Right.
Toddlers have meltdowns. They're really emotional. They have no language and they're poopy. And so these are just normal things that families deal with. It doesn't have to be different just to help your kid support his language or support his behavior or build routines. Those are normal things that we're doing with 2-year-olds. We're just doing them with a little more systematic attention and instruction with a kid who comes with less of those skills.
One of the concerns I'd have, though, and on the literacy view, we're a little bit like we talk about the hard things that some people don't talk about. Sometimes there's not enough time in the classrooms. There is enough time in my perspective, but I don't feel like right now literacy is transitioning, right? There's a lot of demands on teachers. You need to have this, you need to have this in your literacy block. And I'm not seeing enough time allocated to have those conversations. Have you guys noticed that as well? Because you have to do phonemic awareness now. Now you have to do your phonics block. Now you have to do your small group. Now you have to do, oh no, you're doing your maybe into reading lesson. Oh, you have time for 2 turn-in talks and you're done. That's not a real conversation.
No.
So what are your suggestions? How can teachers prioritize language when the school system is not set up in a way that's allowing them to prioritize language?
So this morning we were talking about classroom essentials, how to make a schedule that works in your classroom, how to share power with your classroom assistant, how to keep someone from always doing the dirty work, and how to communicate with your kids about the schedule. So if you can get your day flowing smoothly, there's more time than you think. If you're spending a lot of time struggling with transitions or struggling with behavior or trying to do it all yourself, then you've lost precious teaching time. And also we talk about the drop-in moments for teaching, about banking time, that it's those informal conversations with kids.
I love those informal conversations. When I was a classroom teacher for a very long time, 15 years in K-2, pre-K to 2, I had those conversations, and yes, maybe we stood on the rug a little bit too long, and maybe these mini lessons or whatever they call them, they shouldn't even be calling them that anymore. Maybe it lasted a couple of minutes longer than they should, but I got to know my kids. And now, 25 years later, some of my students are reaching out to me. Some of them are telling me, you know what, you were my kindergarten teacher. I'm now a doctor in Oxford. Or another kid, parents will still reach out to me. Those conversations matter. Yeah. We can't just have these students that we get to know on a surface level. These are people. They're our future. And we don't get to know our kids enough.
You know what? Lives are happening in the classroom.
Right.
Your life is happening in the classroom, and their lives are happening in the classroom. And if we pretend that it's only about instruction, we're kind of missing point that lives are happening here.
Lives are happening.
We're happening together. And that language normally is a lot of it gets learned in the context of life, not just in the context of instruction. And if you pay attention and you're present, you'll know what to say to your students that will be helpful.
Exactly. And I always feel love wins. Love wins in those classrooms. Your children will do so much better if you show love and care. Even if you told them they didn't do great on a test, or if they're having a hard time and you come to a child with compassion, they're going to rise up and do better. So in terms of social emotional well-being, how do you see language plays an impact?
It's everything. I talked about this yesterday. It's everything at the level of brain development. These are two systems developing in parallel that influence one another. Language can moderate and support emotional development. Emotional development can make learning language harder. And so the language of love conveys a lot of stuff. It conveys emotional support, but it can also convey syntax. There's no reason
That's
you
right.
can't express a complex sentence in that.
That's so interesting that you just said that, because I have on my notes, because I was listening to you very carefully. I said, I love what you said about making complex sentence structures in your classrooms. So can you tell me like a little bit more from a practical point of view? What would that look like in a classroom? Like what kind of routines can I encourage, or how can I bring those language supports into the classroom on a practical level?
So we do little kids. I want to talk about little kids. So
This is great. This is my whole wheelhouse. This is like I'm sitting with my people.
I feel like with the little ones, we're all about how we can weave it into what you're already doing. So in opportunities where you might ask a question or something like that, thinking about how you can describe it and making sure all the components of grammar and syntax are present. So if you are saying something that's the phone is on the table, instead of asking these rote questions of like, what is it? What color is that? Describing things and what they're doing. And so we talk about things that are targets in terms of being at the child's level and then a little bit above their level as well. So if they're only using one or two words, then you would model that in a complete sentence.
Can I push you guys a little bit? Can you guys model as if your kids, so I could see it happening in real time?
Give me a kid.
Okay. I would have offered, but I was scared I was going to mess up, and I don't want to mess up on the air. So here we go, ladies.
Right. Yeah, like
Candy. The candy is closed. Candy is stuck. I can't get it.
and the kid might say candy. So like, or I can say, yummy.
Mm-hmm. And so if she just said yummy, we say, oh, the candy is yummy, to expand that sentence.
I wouldn't actually eat the candy. I probably would. I think these strategies can just embed it into emotion, like the labeling emotions. It can be like, if I'm feeling frustrated, Taydi can be like, you're feeling frustrated, and kind of help me find like the calm down strategies, just like support that process. That like labeling emotions, also like identifying the emotion that they're feeling. Because I think toddlers, they have big emotions and they might not know what that emotion is.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the language is just foundation to everything. Like with peer interactions, if Taydi and I were like peers in the classroom, we're just playing together, and the teacher would support those interactions of like how to engage together, how to collaboratively play together, build blocks together. And if we kind of like have a conflict, like taking turns, that's also language comes in to support how to model like, oh, can I have a turn? Can I have that block? And just giving positive feedback. Because I think
So it's almost like explicit instruction in the pre-K world.
it is explicit instruction.
Exactly. And that's my next thing. Why am I seeing very little signs of reading trickling into our pre-K classrooms? Like I want to get into my pre-Ks really badly this year, more and more. And I know language is important, and I know nap time is important, and I know playtime is important. I get it. But I also think that we're missing some opportunities to bring some explicit instruction into those classrooms, so that I'll give you an example. Now in my school, we are using a program. I'm not going to name the program on the air, but we don't show our kids the letters and sounds till mid-kindergarten. And if we just expose kids more in pre-K in a fun, engaging way and worked on those phonemic awareness, hearing, and maybe a little drill and so forth, I think it would help my students. What do you guys think?
I think it depends.
Oh, let's go. This is the literacy view.
Well,
This is something I'm
let me
really
say a few
interested in.
things.
I want to
think
hear
a lot of people don't want to hear the word reading too early in kids' development. But literacy support, language is everything. So teaching language is getting kids ready to read. It's really foundational to getting kids ready to read. I also think that intensity of instruction kind of matches the kid's age. So with 3-year-olds, you really are teaching naturalistically in response to the kid. That doesn't mean you can't point out letters and sounds. It doesn't mean you can't ever talk about how words work.
Right.
But you're not going to have a very good time with a 15-minute instructional lesson with a 3-year-old.
Right.
And it's not developmentally appropriate to do that. When kids are 4.5 and they're about to go into kindergarten, there's a lot of room to begin to have those kinds of lessons to get ready for kindergarten. So with 2 and 3-year-olds, we share books. We follow the kid's lead in the book. We talk about what the kid's interested in. We talk about the emotions. Look at him.
Right.
Look at that bear. Look at his
Right.
face. He's so happy. Or we talk about sounds sometimes, but we do it in this very much responding to the kid, what he's showing us he's interested in, and using books, not so much read the book and ask questions as share the book and focus on the parts that are really interesting. A good teacher can take advantage of all of that.
Right.
And we have a whole approach to book reading that we use with really little kids. Taydi's doing it in Spanish right now with kids as young as 18 months
Wow.
old. And we have some pretty good data about how that can influence vocabulary and early emergent sentences. And this is something we teach to parents all the time. And we think it's a very good thing to teach to parents because book reading is a normal thing to do at home with your kid.
Right. And I think like it comes naturally for a lot of us that are educators. We do it every day. We know how to show the book, but we can't. And that's one of the big takeaways for me at the conference. We can't assume. We can't assume that because I know something, you know something. And I think that, educating our parents and getting our parents, I almost was thinking while I was sitting here, maybe we need a conference for parents. And I'm going to give out all my ideas. Somebody's going to do it. But I do think it's important. And I think another thing that's really important, we get so much information. How can we bring that information to life? What does it look like? Like you guys modeling that right now was so powerful. I would spend like 5 hours with you guys asking you to model, but there's another speaker coming in a couple of seconds.
And we have lots and lots of videotapes of fabulous.
And where
modeling
could people
with
find
kids.
them?
They can find them on our website, Vanderbilt Kid Talk.
If you guys can send me those links,
Yep, we'll send you the
even
links.
if it's not tonight, our viewers will
Yeah.
look at
We
the
have
show
lots
notes.
of
and-
materials for teachers, lots of materials for parents. They're in English and in Spanish, and we're thrilled to be able to share them.
Okay, so this is the literacy view. 3 things that you think are complete BS in literacy.
Reading disabilities begin at kindergarten. You can't assess kids bilingually. What
That
else?
you need to read the book front to back.
Right. What would you add, Anju?
Oh my goodness.
Just got to give one. Something that you think is complete BS in terms of, the pre-K space or the early childhood space in terms of like, what have you heard that you think is like complete BS?
That book reading needs to be academic. Yeah, I think.
Tell me more about that.
I think book share. We say book sharing because I think that approach is what we believe is more effective. But I think the focus needs to be more fun and positive and exposure to
I think so
print
too.
materials so that they can start getting that later literacy skills and like, oh, reading books is fun.
I know. And
What
I'm
can
not
we
seeing
do?
enough of that. Right now, a lot of these publishers created these, curriculums, and there's so many little excerpts, and there's not as many fun read alouds. When I was in the classroom, I was reading The Magic Fish. I was reading the 7 Chinese Brothers. I was reading these fun books that I was like, we were like all so excited, including me. And I hope that we don't forget that. So thank you so much for mentioning that point. And finally, one thing from each of you that we can cheer and celebrate in terms of the direction we're going as in terms of language and this area.
Well,
What
we're
can we
at this
celebrate?
meeting, which we have been celebrating a lot, and that we're here as very early interventionists. and
That's
being
beautiful.
Included in
I'm
that
with my
conversation.
people. I'm an early interventionist. I work with little kids. That's what I
Yeah.
do. I'm a reading specialist for little kids. Anything else that we could cheer and celebrate?
I think that bilingualism is becoming more encouraged, more
Good.
positive, and that we're getting better at encouraging parents to do that from the beginning and not shy away from using their home language.
Yeah, I think similar to that, all the conversation that we've been having at this conference has been very positive and like encouraging for us to keep doing what we do, to push, like advocating for the families, for the teachers, and to support them. I think, like with the bilingual assessment talk we did yesterday, a lot of educators, a lot of people in the field,
Right.
in the practice, were so interested. How can we do better? How can I?
Yeah, we all want to do better.
Yeah, how can I help them? And I think having them to ask those questions out there means so much for us to keep doing so that we can also help research to practice, that connecting the
I think
bridge.
that's key.
Yeah.
Are you guys thinking about expanding? So I see people like you guys in the New York City area. Did you say you were in New York?
No, I
She-
didn't.
She was a teacher in New York.
Yeah.
She lived in the Bronx.
Oh my God. I'm in District 9 in the Bronx. That's amazing. I hope that we stay connected, and I hope that you can help us move the work forward. Thank you so much for being here on the Literacy
Thank you
View.
for inviting us.
Thank you.
You make that easy and fun.
You're still on the air. That's
She makes
fun.
this easy and fun.
For her first podcast on Literacy View. I think Ann is definitely, and her friends are no BS besties for life. And I can't wait to talk to them again, and they're always welcome here.
Hi, No BS Besties. It's Judy from the Literacy View, and I wanted to announce some really great news. Faith and I have launched our own consulting services for all of our No BS Besties. So check it out on theliteracyview.com. We have data chats. We have a No BS Bestie helpline. We have Don't Make Me Press the BS Button screeners and assessment work that we do. We'll help you build classroom libraries that build readers. We'll help you with gamifying education and professional learning. We're also really excited to launch our exciting Science of Reading aligned reading retreats. We'll find you, we'll set up, and let's get this party started. We also have parent literacy events that we could help support you with. We could also connect you to literacy experts in the field, create a no BS literacy community and WhatsApp groups for your school. And also, we're interested in helping you setting up a strong pre-K and foundational skills program in your school. Choose your own literacy adventure. Contact FaithandJudy@gmail.com for our no BS literacy services. And also, you could find out more about all our services on theliteracyview.com.